Hey, good evening, everybody. We have got Clark Fredericks with us. It's a graphic story, so please be warned in advance. And, shout out to Rotten Mango channel. Clark went mega viral over there, multi-millions of views. She's doing a phenomenal job on Rotten Mango. I've watched her stuff on Diddy, and yeah, shout out to her as well. But huge thank you for coming on, man. And I've got a restriction on my channel by the cops. So I've got to just say to you, because of the nature of this story, do you give us permission to publish your story, and do you waive your anonymity?
Of course.
All right. Well, let us go back then to what it was like for you growing up.
Yeah, I grew up in a real rural area, and you think rural areas are safe. And I'm talking like, cow pastures, horse farms, deer hunting, hiking, boating, hunting, fishing, snowmobiling. That's what everybody did where I grew up. Little town of Stillwater, New Jersey. And you know what can happen though is evil can hide in plain sight in places like that. Nobody thinks that there's a predator amongst them until it's too late. And in my case, that predator had a 45-year reign of terror. And you know what predators have to do is they have to win over the community. They have to win over the family, and then they win over the victim. And that's exactly what happened in my case. At 6 years old, I had open heart surgery, Shaun. And yeah, it was 1971. It was a life or death surgery. And I survived it. And my parents were so proud of me for surviving it. They didn't want me to feel different for having a scar now. Little kids, they just want to fit in amongst each other. And so they tried to normalize my scar by having me show it to their friends and collect a quarter from everybody. And one of their friends they had me show it to was my older brother's scoutmaster. And this guy was a lieutenant in the sheriff's department. He's a lieutenant in the sheriff's department. He's a scoutmaster. He's on the historical society of our town. He's leading an Audubon society in our community. He's on the Kiwanis Club. Listen to this. Kiwanis is for the betterment of children in your community. And he's an active member in Kiwanis. He's the chaplain at the American Legion post, saying the prayer to start all the American Legion meetings. So, like I said, they hide in plain sight. This guy was hiding in plain sight. And what he really was a professional hunter of children. And he started grooming me at 6 years old. And it progressed. He took his time. They are methodical. And he took his time. And over the course of the next 4 years, it went from the playbook, of these guys is, they have to initiate touch at some point. They ply you with alcohol. They show you pornography. All those things he did. And he befriended me out of the watchful eye of my parents. Back in the 70s, when you grew up, as soon as you could learn to ride your bike, your parents told you, be gone and be home at dinner time. And I lived in a lake community, so all the young kids went down to the lake, and we fished and skipped rocks, and there was jungle gyms and basketball courts and baseball fields, tennis courts, everything. So that's where everybody hung out, down at the lake. And that's where this guy would just come by constantly, spending time with us, teaching us how to fish for hours, inviting me into his truck at 9 years old to have a beer. Showing me Polaroid pictures, nude pictures. And it eventually, so this is over the course of years now, and eventually between 10 to 12 is when he essayed me. And I told myself after the final encounter where he did the ultimate betrayal to me, that I would just bury this down deep inside, that I was never going to talk about it, because talking about it to me, my mind said, would be reliving it. And we could just go about our life. And almost immediately, as a 12-year-old kid, I started smoking weed, and then it just progressed to heavy drinking in high school, and my grades being mediocre, and not wanting to get involved in sports. And there's other things, that abuse victims do, like playing with fire, shoplifting. And there were signs, but is it signs of just an adolescent going through puberty and getting into high school and meeting other kids and acting out, or is there an underlying issue there? And for me, my mother worked in the high school where I went to. And I guess all the teachers thought, like, since she works in the high school, if there was a problem, she would know about it. But abuse victims are great at cranking on a smile, or, we have those two faces, the face we have behind closed doors, and then the face we show the world. And the face I showed the world was, just happy-go-lucky Clark, where the face behind closed doors was racked in pain and shame and guilt and hatred and rage and anger. And, that's how I held for myself. I held all the hate for myself until at age 17. As I mentioned, this scoutmaster was my older brother's scoutmaster. And also my next door neighbor, Jeff, who was like a brother to me, he and my brother were joined at the hip. They were best friends. They were in the scouts together. And at 23, Jeff unalived himself. And my brother and I found him next door. And I blamed instantly in my mind, I blamed my abuser, Dennis Pegg. And that's where all my hate and rage and anger shifted from solely to myself to now towards him. And it just built over the years, and I seethed, and it doesn't, Shaun, it doesn't lessen as time goes on. It's like a poison that's eroding every aspect of your being, psychologically, mentally, physically, spiritually. At 12 years, I was an altar boy in the Episcopal Church. And at 12 years old, I was like, what good is this God thing? Why should I be involved in this? And that's, I put a dividing wall up between me and God back then. And, I've heard people equate being SA'd to soul murder. It just kills your soul and it destroys your soul. And that's basically what happened to me. And so now, I graduate high school, I go off to college, and now I'm on my own. And one thing is, I thought by going to college, I would distance myself from the pain and the shame. But until you address it, that pain and shame follows you everywhere. And it carried with me right up to college. It doesn't go away. And I went to college back in the 80s, and I tried, my first rail of white back then, and absolutely loved it. Like, it took away all my insecurities and just made me feel strong and powerful and outgoing, instead of this broken individual I kept inside. And I also met what being essayed does to a person is it makes it impossible to be intimate. Now, sex and intimacy are two totally different things. Intimacy, you have to be open. And I met the love of my life in college. And after college, she wanted to start our lives and get married and have kids and careers. And a long-term relationship or a long-term career made me feel trapped. And trapped is how I felt at that guy's house. And it's not like I consciously said to myself, if I get into a long-term relationship and get married, I'm going to be trapped. It was just like a complete uncomfortable feeling. The thought of it brought on anxiety, and I couldn't do it. And I told her I can't do it. And I broke her heart, and I walked away. And that haunted me, Shaun, haunted me my whole life, that animal destroyed my ability to be intimate with the woman I loved. And after college, I am off on, my own devices now. And it just started turning into one addiction after another. When you're holding on to trauma, you become a pleasure seeker. So you have this trauma that you haven't addressed. You're feeling uncomfortable. You're feeling depressed. You're feeling anxiety. And you seek pleasure to get rid of that feeling instantly. And that's what I did my whole life. I just became a pleasure seeker, whether it was sex, whether it was gambling, whether it was drugs or alcohol. I had no coping skills other than those types of vices. And that's what I did, and just chased those things, chased them my whole life. My 20s were a blur of one night stands and one career after another. 2 years would be the max in a job I held. 2 years and out. One night stand. And my mind told me if we sleep with enough women, we'll feel strong and powerful and like a man instead of the weak individual I felt like inside. And man, living like that for that whole decade of my 20s, I went into my 30s like a shell of a man. Just like I hurt so many women in my 20s. They would catch feelings for me. And as soon as they would catch a feeling for me, I'd be, shoo, see ya, I'm out of here. I can't have that, man. Mm-hmm. You're shaking your head like maybe you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've interviewed a lot of survivors, man, and it's heartbreaking. I really feel for you. I've got a 2-year-old here, and you just see how innocent a child is. And you described it really well. They are child hunters. They're swallowing people's souls. And once that soul is harvested, it's really hard to put the pieces back together again, because so many people unalive themselves or just fall back on addictions and the things you're describing and end their own, the lives are shortened through that. And I commend your bravery speaking about this. And it's, you've come through it and you're using it now to inspire other people. And that's the way to transform that dark energy.
Yeah. You can't heal from something you can't talk about. It's impossible. And SA survivors, usually it's one of three things that is waiting for you in life: addiction, death, or healing. And I came close to the second one, death, on numerous times. I definitely hit all the marks on the first one. And by the grace of God, I have a second chance at life, and I'm healing, and I'm trying to help others heal. Just, like when it's male on male essaying, it is just so tough for guys to talk about it. And I'm just trying to pave the way, that if you can just, the toughest thing to do when you've been essayed is to break your silence. It's the absolute toughest thing to do. I did a book reading event last night, book reading, book selling, book signing. And I had a girl, man, I couldn't believe people drove from all around the country to be at this event. It was amazing. The event was in New Jersey. People came from Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, Massachusetts, and somebody even drove all the way from New Mexico. And I Googled how long the drive from New Mexico to New Jersey is, and it's 24 hours. And I was just like, wow, dude, you're committed, man. But this girl from Massachusetts came, and when she came up to get her book signed, she just sobbed and couldn't speak a word to me. And I said, were you essayed? And she just nodded her head. And she couldn't talk to me. And she had somebody with her who said they drove from Massachusetts. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to write my phone number in your book. I signed it for her. I wrote my phone number, and I said, call me, and we're going to get through this together. So I hope she calls, man. That was last night at 10 o'clock at night. So, but that's the toughest thing to do, is to break your silence. But the most rewarding thing to do is to break your silence.
All right, let me just give a summary for the viewers so far then. We're here with Clark Fredericks. His book is called Scarred, and all of Clark's links are in the description box below this video. He started out giving us his background as a kid, whereby these evil things happened to him, and the guy who did it, was high up in the Scouts. The guy who did it had interactions with his brother and interactions with his neighbor, and the neighbor's kid unalived himself, and then Clark, it all brought it to the surface, and Clark, who was seething against himself and what had happened, then the energy, the direction of that went towards the perpetrator. Is that an accurate summary?
Yeah. Yep.
All right. So how old are you at this point of the story now? You're in your 20s, did you say?
Through my 20s, it was the one night stands, the career change constantly. And then I felt like an empty shell at the end of my 20s, and I needed something else to distract me from that uncomfortable feeling. And I found it in gambling. And I went to a casino, and without even knowing really what I was doing with blackjack, I won $1,700. I went back 2 weeks later, won $2,200. But people were like yelling at me at the table because I'm not doing the right thing, and I was just like, but I still won. But everybody's yelling at me. So I'm like, before I go back again, I'm gonna learn everything about blackjack and craps, so I don't get yelled at. And that's what I did. And over the next 6 months, I just practiced cards. And I'm looking at all the comments here. It's just getting distracted.
No, don't pay attention. Just keep talking.
Oh, Jackie read the book and she loved it. I gotta shout out to Jackie. Jackie Gilbert, yeah, baby. So when I went back to the casinos, and this isn't to brag, Shaun, but I had an unbelievable 4-year run in the casinos. Like, just like astronomical, winning tens of thousands of dollars constantly. Yes, I lost big sometimes. I'm making $700 in the tire automotive industry a week. And that would be one hand of blackjack. I'm betting that. It was insanity. And my biggest win was 153,000. And that was after losing 3 hands of craps where I had 20 to 30,000 on the crap table and lost 3. So I was like over $250,000 for that night. But you know what? It never made me happy. It didn't do anything for me. It was just another outlet, another tool for me to use to live a more decadent lifestyle. Like, all right, now I got more money. I can just be, get more vices, get more drugs, just run quicker in life, 24/7. And that's all money did for me, because I wasn't healed, and I didn't respect money back then. And I couldn't wait. Like gambling, like any other addiction, you build up a tolerance to it, and you need more and more and more and more. Well, I couldn't wait for the weekends to come to go to the casinos. What do I do Monday through Friday when I'm feeling on edge and I got anxiety and I got depression? And I'm just feeling uncomfortable. Well, I need action during the week too. So I started sports betting through a local bar who was, aligned with the mob. And they gave me like word about, like I would take buddies down with me from my area to go gamble, for the weekend, and all expenses paid. And so they would come back and tell everybody, like, Clark's out of his mind. Like, he won $50,000. I never seen somebody bet like him, or he lost, $50,000. He's insane. And so word spread around. And so when I started sports betting with the mob, they gave me an open limit. So I could bet as much as I wanted, as often as I wanted. There was no cap. And, I started off, $500 a game, just taking it easy. And then, I had some big wins with them, 30, 40,000 a week wins. But then I just started losing and losing and losing and losing. And at one point I had a briefcase in my room with hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and chips, like just sitting there, like anybody could have walked in and just grabbed it. I had been like, somebody told me, I was a dopey idiot back then, and somebody had told me, as long as you put in deposit under $10,000 into your checking account, it doesn't notify the IRS. So I'm like, really? Oh, great. So I'm going every week with 9,000, 9,400, 9,600, 9,700, 9,200, thinking I'm slick. And that set off all the bells and whistles to the IRS. And I had an IRS criminal investigation agent come right to my house. I wasn't home, but he left a business, gold embossed business card that said, "Call me immediately, Mr. Fredericks." And they were going to charge me with, money fraud, and did a complete audit on me. And that was a nightmare. And now I'm gambling with the mob. In about 6 months' time, Shaun, is all it took for all my money to be gone. Like, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars was gone. And my last week with the mob betting, I was down 20,000. And I called up the number and I said, "Hey, I got to move some money around. Can I roll that 20,000 over to the next week?" And they're like, "For you, anything." So I'm like, cool. So now I'm 20 in the hole going into the next week. And I'm like, all right, I got to win at minimum 20, but I want to keep gambling, so I got to get more. So I started betting like parlays and just doing stupid bets. And at the end of the week, I was 77,000 in debt to the mob. And then Shaun, then I knew I was done. The 20,000, I didn't know I was done, but the 77, I knew I was done. And then my life like just turned to crap, bro. Like I had to call that number up and say, look, man, I'm tapped out. I don't have any money for you guys. And I tried to set up a payment plan with them. Like I wasn't trying to run. And the only way I knew to resolve it was to make a monthly payment. And they laughed at that. They said that doesn't, I wanted to pay them $500 a month. And they're like, are you insane? That doesn't even cover the juice. Oh, man. And they started threatening my life. And I got daily calls, sometimes multiple calls a week. And this went on for months. And I just said, look, I'm not going to the authorities. I'm not running. I want to make good by you guys. The only way I know how to make good is to pay a monthly payment. This is all I can do. And they just weren't having it. And the last phone call I got from them after months and months and months and months and months of these calls every day was, you're a dead man. They didn't ask for money. They just said, you're a dead man, and click. And you know what they wanted me to do that whole time, Shaun? You'll love this. Is they were big on me robbing a bank. They're like, dude, we're going to kill you if you don't get us money. You got to go rob a bank. If you get caught, you're looking at 5 to 10 years. That's a lot better than what we're going to do to you if you don't pay us. Go rob a bank. Maybe you get away with it and it can pay us. That's constantly on me to go rob a bank. And I never entertained the thought of robbing a bank, So the last phone call came, and then a couple months went by. Maybe I can't remember. Like 2 months maybe. And I'm at my business. My brother and I had 2 businesses. I happened to stop into my brother's store. We're in the tire automotive business. And his office manager yells to the back office where I'm talking with my brother. He's like, hey, you got to call on line 1. And I'm like, who the hell would call me over here? He goes, I don't know. So I pick up the phone, and a guy introduces himself as a special agent with the FBI. And I'm like, and what can I do for you? He's like, I need to have a conversation with you, Mr. Fredericks. I'm going to be at your Newton location. That's where the other store was, in Newton. He goes, I'm going to be at your Newton location on Thursday at 3:00, and I suggest you be there. And I'm like, whoa. You got to tell me what this is about. And he's like, no, I don't. I'll see you then. Click. For whatever reason, because it had been 2 months since that last phone call, I wasn't even thinking of those guys or related to them. I thought it was something to do with drugs. And the guy shows up, and he's obviously an FBI guy. He gives me a card, and he tells me they have a confidential informant inside one of the major crime families, and that informant relayed that a hit had been put out of my life for my gambling debt. And that's tough. And they wanted me to wear a wire. Like the FBI wanted me to like wire up and try to take these guys down. And I said, are you out of your cotton picking mind? Like, there is no way I'm wearing a wire. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, and I said to them this same thing I said to the mob guys. I'm like, this is my problem, and I'm going to try to solve it like a man. I'm not going to wear a wire on these guys. And the FBI guy's like, well, that's very noble of you, but when things get too heavy, here's my card, and you can give me a call, and we'll come help you. I was like, yeah. And it wasn't that like I was trying to be a tough guy. It was just like, I don't know, maybe it was from being abused. Like you're so beaten down anyway. Like you get to the point of whatever, dude. Whatever's gonna happen, whatever. Like you don't know what happened in my childhood. So like these guys are going to take me out. All right. So they take me out, they end my pain. You know, it was sort of that mentality. And I lived on edge, Shaun. You know, like I had a shotgun in my pickup, loaded shotgun that I drove around with. I had a baseball bat in my office. I had to look out all the windows of my house every morning before leaving the house. Leaving my office, I'm always like scanning everywhere. And I lived that way for a while, for a long while. And then nothing ever happened. And it just eventually went away. You know, I don't know what happened to the mob. You know, there's probably one of three things. That they got busted, they got killed, or the guy running the boiler room for gambling was taking my money and not turning it into the bosses. You know, if they have a heavy hitter, they got to figure like they're going to win eventually. Why should we turn this money into the bosses? They might have been pocketing themselves, and they're not hired killers. The boss has the hired killers. They can't go to the boss because they were skimming. They would get killed. So it's one of those three things. So I don't know what happened, bro. But it was those were like the worst years of my life. Like that whole gambling phase just eroded my soul, man. Just, you know, like I already had this hole in my soul. Now it's just like shredded, man. Did you ever get into the gambling bug?
Fortunately not. Well, I mean, you call the stock market gambling, but not like, I mean, Wildman, any amount of money he had, he'd just go straight to the casino and he'd have no money by the end of the day. Yeah.
So, you know, so that's, you know, that was my like 30s, you know, like to like 35, 36. And then I didn't know, you know, that victims of SA have PTSD. I've learned that later on. But in my 40s, I fell into a huge depression. Like I didn't know like how to handle it. So, you know, just getting out of bed every morning to go to work was like climbing Mount Everest. It was just so exhausting, bro. Like to get up out of bed and go to work. So instead of pouring coffee in my coffee mug, I started pouring in vodka and OJ or white wine and champagne spritzers, you know, like to go to work. And I did that for a while. And then I'd be so exhausted at work, you know, like just unable to do the simplest tasks. So then my mind told me like, hey, that white stuff we loved back in our early days in college, maybe we could just do a little of that throughout the day to give us energy. You know, and I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a great idea, you know. So, you know, a couple bumps here and there turn into more bumps and then more bumps, and then you're doing it every day, and then it just becomes a monster, bro. And I hurt my back doing tire automotive work, and I went to a doctor, and he prescribed me pain pills, and I got hooked on them. You know, like they made me feel like I was 17 again, like I could just work like an animal. And so I'm doing the pain pills, I'm doing the white, I'm drinking heavily, and this is how I'm living for a couple of years. And I'm living this way. And around 45, I'm in a deli getting a coffee. And the front door opens, and I look up, and it's my abuser.
No.
Yeah. And he comes walking in. Now, I had seen him around town. You know, we're talking 3 decades. But it had been at least 10 years since I'd seen him. But what was different this time is he had a young boy with him. And that young boy, Dennis used to have a nickname that he wanted me to call him. And I heard that young boy calling him that nickname. And that was it, Shaun. Like, it just, I had buried all that garbage from my youth, and it just ripped it wide open. And I ran out of it. He yelled out to me, "Hey, Clark, like, we're best friends, dude. Like you destroyed my life, bro. And you're calling to me like we're best friends." And people always reach out to me and they say they want to go confront their abuser. And I say, don't do it, because these people are evil and they can never let that mask down. You're not going to get a "I'm sorry" from them. You're not going to get an apology. You're just going to get re-tormented because they won't apologize. And so here's my guy, like, "Hey, Clark," like really? And I ran out of there. We shoulder bumped. I got in my truck, Shaun. I sped down the highway. I was cursing. I was punching my steering wheel. I was spitting in my truck, and my life collapsed. I'm already carrying this deep depression that I'm using various substances to overcome. And after like 3-4 weeks after seeing him, I couldn't go to work anymore. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't do it. And I walked out of the family business. I was in business with my brother, and we had a blow up, and I walked away, and that was it, man. And now, Shaun, now the worst thing is to have free time on your hands. So I got my trauma that's been ripped open. I got my abuser, Dennis Pegg, in the forefront of my mind, and I'm using substances. And I don't know what to do with my trauma that's ripped open and Dennis Pegg in my mind. So I just dove headfirst, Shaun, into drugs and alcohol. I had no coping skills. And, I'm sure you've had people on, who've abused substances. Like, my substance use went through the roof. I'm buying ounces of white a week. And one thing that happened from being SA'd early on is you get your boundaries stripped from you. And boundaries, like, we all set boundaries for how we want to live our life. I can no longer live within my boundaries. So no matter what boundary I set for myself, it was meaningless. And, one of those boundaries was, I will never, ever, ever do H. So we got white and we got H. And I told myself, the homeless people are the ones that do that. The people on Skid Row or Kensington Avenue in Philadelphia or the streets of New York. Drugs lie to you. They lie to you and they invite you in. And it doesn't matter if you're homeless, if you're a movie star, a rock star, a rap star, or a guy in the tire automotive business. It's going to have the same effect on you. And when pain pills ran out and I couldn't find any, I dove into H, man, and started doing that. And I lived this way for a short period of time, and I couldn't shake seeing that young boy with him in that deli. And I wondered what part of the grooming process that young boy was at. Was he almost ready to be SA'd, or was he being shown pornography, or was he giving them beer and teaching them how to fish? And I just 24/7, that kid's on my mind. And one night I had a buddy over to my house, And I had run into somebody earlier in the day who I had a business falling out with. And I hadn't seen the guy since we had that falling out. And I told my buddy about running into this guy. And my buddy said to me, that guy's got to be number one on your X list. And before I could stop the words coming out of my mouth, I said, actually, he's number two. The piece of garbage who essayed me as a kid is number one. And that's the first time in my life I've ever let those words out, ever. And within 15 minutes, we're in my buddy's van driving to go confront this guy. I haven't been back to that house, Shaun, in 30 years since the last encounter I had with him. And we parked, his house, you'll love this part. His house sat on a little knoll right above the elementary school in Stillwater. Yeah. And I played, little league baseball as a kid. And guess who would be down at every game we had? There's a fence around it, and he'd be on the fence and cheering all of us on. And then he'd come around the fence and pat us all on the back and say, good job. And that's where his house was, sat right above the elementary school. And we park halfway up his driveway, run up his driveway. It's a summer night. His front door is open. His screen door is shut. And I look in, and there he is. I didn't even know if he still lived there. It's been 30 years. And he was there. And I start going into a panic attack. I haven't been back to that house since the last encounter. Were you going to say something?
No, I'm just trying to, I'm feeling what you're going through, man.
Yeah. And, and when he would touch me, I would stiffen like a board. I couldn't move my muscles. It was like paralysis would come over. And I felt that paralysis coming over me as I stared at him sitting in his living room. And before I could completely freeze, I walked up to his front door and ripped his screen door open. And here it is, 9:30 at night. A childhood victim of yours is standing in your doorway. And he calmly, as can be, looks over his shoulder and goes, hey, how are you? And Shaun, that just did me in, somebody asked, what if he had gotten on his hands and knees and started praying I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for what I did. I go, what happened next? How could I do what happened next if he's doing that? But that's what I say. A predator will never let that mask down. Ever, dude. They simply can't do it. And here this guy just nonchalantly, he's like, hey, how are you? That set me over the edge. I go, hey, how am I? Let me show you how I am. And that face that I kept behind closed doors for 30 years that nobody saw, I let out, Shaun. He saw that face he created. He saw the pain. He saw the rage. He saw the hurt. He saw the anger. And we got into a violent, bloody fight. And at the end of it, he was unalived. And people want to know, because all victims have that feeling of wanting to do that. The pain they carry is so intense that that's where their mind goes to even the score. And my answer to everybody who says, did that solve all your problems? No. Doing that did not solve my problems. What I did, Shaun, was stop a monster from ever being able to hurt another kid.
Clark, how long did the altercation last?
It wasn't long, bro. It was maybe 3-4 minutes, probably. And in the course of that, I put a knife right through my hand, severed all the ligaments and tendons in my hand. So my hand was like that. I couldn't use it because all the bands were severed in there. But I was so full of adrenaline and other things that it didn't really hurt that bad at the time. And my last words to him, see if I can do this without, ruining your show for you, is he slipped in blood. He fell down. He was up against a wall. He was seriously wounded. And I got down eye level with him, and I looked him in the eye, and I said, "It's not so fun essaying little boys now, is it?" And I ended. And I like to tell everybody, you don't heal from trauma by adding more trauma. It doesn't work. And Shaun, everybody carelessly throws out, every parent out there carelessly throws out, if that ever happened to my kid, I would off them. Well, let me tell you, offing somebody hurts your soul, man. It hurts your psyche. It hurts your being. It's not healthy for you. It's not good, man. And
yeah. Did anyone witness this, Clark? Or see you going in and out?
My buddy was with me. He was in the doorway.
So he saw the whole thing.
He saw the whole thing.
And what was he doing while the altercation was going on for 3 or 4 minutes?
Standing there with his mouth open, like aghast. One thing I did at the end, is we'll leave a little teaser for your audience. But the police were baffled at the crime scene. Nothing was taken from the house. Obviously, this wasn't a robbery. But they were baffled why a set of bloody footprints went to the doorway of his bedroom. And this detective that I became friends with, who was the crime scene investigator, we hooked up after prison. And he asked me that. He goes, that part baffles me. Why? And you get the book, and it's very poignant why I walked bloody footprints to the edge of that guy's bedroom. Get the book, and you can find out why.
I'm putting the link to your book in the live chat, and the link to book is also in the description box if you're watching this on replay. Clark, could you describe your departure from the scene?
My buddy and I hopped in his van. I drove. And, I literally blood, I had a glove on, and blood is just gushing out of the glove. And I'm just saying to my buddy on the drive home, man, dude, my hand is messed up, bro. I'm I don't know what I'm going to do, man. And he was like, bro, I just want to get home to my daughter. He's like, I just want to get home to my daughter. I'm like, well, let's get back to my house and let's, formulate a plan here, man. And I only lived a couple miles from this guy's house. So it was literally less than a 5-minute drive. And we got home, and I'm like, I gotta go get some paper towels. I'll be right back. And I went in for paper towels, and through the kitchen window, I saw him backing down my driveway, and he was off. And I was left to my own devices. And we have a saying here. Maybe you say it over there too in the States here. Duct tape fixes everything. So I got paper towels and duct tape and duct taped my hand. And that's how I treated it. And I was arrested the next day. And it's a whole scenario of how that came out with a family member requesting a well-being check on that guy, thinking maybe they could save me from life in prison if they could get to him while he was still alive. And I woke up the next morning and I went out to pour a glass of wine to try to like formulate a plan, what I was going to do. And my house was surrounded by state police. There had to be 15 to 20 troopers out there, detectives from the prosecutor's office. They all had their guns out. They were hiding behind trees, rock walls, my shed. And I was ordered on a bullhorn to come out of the house with my hands up. And I chugged that glass of wine. I poured another glass. And Shaun, maybe you'll find some humor in this, but I had a high school friend who's a state trooper. And I saw him at a bar maybe 2 months before this happened. And he's like, hey, man, come out to my car. I got some state police hats and shirts. He goes, take some. I was like, all right, cool, bro. So I took some shirts and a hat. And when the police, the state police ordered me out of my house over the bullhorn, I went into my bedroom and I put my state police shirt on. I'm like, this should get me out of this. You know, they'll see I'm one of them and let me go.
Clark, let me just pause you.
Yeah.
All right. So, obviously, this happened, and you've given an important message to the public about the morality of not doing things like that. What I'm interested in is, in the moment and going throughout that night before you got arrested, the psychological waves you were going through, because not many people have been through the things you've just described. So I'm imagining, you come home, you've got your mate with you, and you're having this conversation in the car, and he takes off, but you're just on this huge adrenaline spike, and you're cleaning yourself up. You've probably got a million things going through your head. Could you just take us through what that evening was like for you psychologically? And did you manage to get to sleep, for example?
I did so much more white when I got home, like enough to kill an elephant. And maybe that's what I was trying to do. And maybe that next day, that's what I would have decided my only option was to take myself out. I knew the damage to my hand was going to be my downfall. Like you just can't walk into a hospital and be like, I stuck a hunting knife through my hand, and they'd be like, how'd you do that? And I just knew like that was going to be it. And
did you also, in between those thoughts though, think that about the possibility of getting away with it?
Maybe the next morning when I woke up I'll get to that in a second. But that night I just felt like I'm really, really screwed here, Shaun. Like I saw one of my buddies at a liquor store on my way home that night to meet my friend. And my buddy could tell, I was like pretty amped up. And he said, just get home and be safe. And if you need me later, give me a call. And I called him and I said, hey man, get over here. And he said, I'll be right there. And that was it on the phone call. And then the girl I was dating, I called her and I said, come over here. I need to see you. And I told both of them that I took care of a situation that needed to be taken care of, and that I just flushed the rest of my life away. and that my life was now over, and I just wanted to say goodbye to them. And my mother had just come up from Florida, Shaun. She had just arrived 2 days prior. And I sent my buddy up to go wake my mother up to bring her down. And I couldn't even tell her. I told her what I did. And she just was like, why, Clark? Why? Why would you? Why you? Why would you do that? And I couldn't tell her that I was one of his victims. I couldn't say the words to my mother even then. With my life being over, I said, I righted a wrong for my brother Jay, for Jeff, and for a whole hell of a lot of other kids in this town, Mom. And she goes, but why are you the person to right the wrong? I don't get it. Why? And I couldn't say because I was one of the victims too. I couldn't tell her that night. And so that was where I was. I said goodbye to my girlfriend, bye to my buddy. And I took a bunch of Xanax and I chugged a Kettle One bottle and went to bed with my hand wrapped in duct tape. And my mother stayed up cleaning up all the blood. And my mother wanted to go on the run with me. She told my sister, she called my sister in the early morning hours and told her what she thought I had done. And my sister was like, what are we going to do? And my mother said, I'm going to go on the run with him. She wanted to go all Bonnie and Clyde, bro. And my sister said, Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Are you out of your mind? You can't take him on the run. Where are you going to go? And she goes, we're going to go to Florida and hide out there. Like, just like one of these old school moms, like, you're not taking my son, God bless her, bro. And I didn't know this. I only found this out later on, but this was the conversation my sister and her were having. And my sister's like, Mom, you're not thinking clearly. You can't get involved in this. You're 80 years old. You want to go sit in prison? Like, really? And she's like, no cops. Don't you call the cops. And so my sister ended up calling in a well-being check. And, everybody's loving my mom right now. It's a riot. My sister thought I would hate her for the rest of my life. And to be honest, at the time, Shaun, when something doesn't go the way we want it to go, we can't see the silver lining at the time. But had my sister not done what she did, that next morning, bro, it wasn't going to be good for me. It was, bro, I probably would have taken myself out, man. I wasn't going to go do life in prison. Why? So I got arrested the next day. And at the state police barracks, the lieutenant who ran the crime scene unit, who was at the house and did the investigation, he showed up at the barracks. And cops, for the last, few years have gotten a bad rap. But this guy was a straight shooter. And with everything going in society now, people are polarized, like with politics, it's just out of control how people get one-sided with politics and their views. And this guy was able to be a gray area thinker. People are usually black and white, and this dude was a gray area thinker. And he even told me far too many of my fellow officers are black and white thinkers. And I try to think in the gray zone. And what this guy did is he came into my holding cell at the barracks and he told me, he goes, in a few minutes, you're going to get pulled out of this cell and taken into an interrogation room. And my officers are in there waiting to interrogate you. And I'm telling you right now, I've got enough evidence from the crime scene. Don't go in there and open your mouth and flush the rest of your life away. Your life doesn't necessarily have to be over. You're in trouble. You're going to jail. You're probably going to do some prison time. He goes, but if you go in there and open your mouth, that could be it for you. He goes, so I'm telling you, go in there, request a lawyer, and don't say another word. And I go to him, but I don't have a lawyer. And he goes, I'm going to take care of that. And when he left that holding cell, he called the top-rated lawyer in our county on cell phone. The guy answered, and he said, I need you to fax over a retainer for Clark Fredericks, arrested for murder, and I need it ASAP. And he said within 2 to 3 minutes, it came through on the fax machine. He went into his officers in the thing and handed it to them. They called me in there, and I said, I'm not going to say another word without my lawyer. And they said, is that really how you want to handle this? And I said, yeah. And that was it. And I didn't say another word.
Wow, and, what a guardian angel, man. I got goosebumps when you told me that bit.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And I've called him a guardian angel, man. And that event I did last night, the book reading and the book signing, I had him on stage with me.
Wow.
And I picked 8 parts of my book, and I read from 8 parts. And I had 2 other guests up there with me, but we read parts of the crime scene and parts of my arrest, and he was up there answering the questions for the audience. And there was a lot of questions, bro. And there's one thing we're going to do 2 teasers now. So we're going to do a second teaser, because people have to be kicked in the butt to go buy a book. They just won't go do it. So I want them to really my book Scarred reads like the most amazing thriller novel. It's totally incredible. And I want people to go to page 135 and see the last line of that book. In New Jersey, where I'm from, state police, it's usually state police work a crime scene, draft a report, and hand it off to prosecutors. In New Jersey, prosecutors are allowed to be at the crime scene with the state police. And there's a lot of headbutting. The state police want to work the crime scene, do their job, come up with their analysis, and then hand that off to the prosecutor, and they determine whether to prosecute or not. In New Jersey, they're working the scene together. And this guy, Howie Ryan, had an altercation with the prosecutor at the crime scene. And what he said to the prosecutor is the most unbelievable sentence you can imagine. So go get the book, people, and go to page 135. You won't believe what Howie Ryan said to the prosecutor. It's amazing. And I thought I had my phone on. I'm sorry, Shaun. It just went off. I don't know if you could hear that or not.
You're fine. Let me just remind the viewers that all of Clark's links are in the description box, book, Instagram, and YouTube channel. So please support him on those socials and get the book.
Thank you. So I'm dumped off at I had to go for emergency hand surgery from the state police barracks right to the hospital. And then from there, I'm dumped off at the county jail. And I'm put into the county jail where this guy, I told you he was lieutenant in the sheriff's department. This guy worked his whole 25-year career in the jail. And I thought, for sure I was going to get the beating of a lifetime for taking out one of their own. And they put me into a suicide cell at the county jail.
Let's call it an unalive cell.
Unalive cell. Sorry, dude. And one by one, like they have to do cell checks. And one by one, guards are coming in there. And like every time the door would open, like I would try to get to my feet to be ready. And they're like, look, man, I'm hearing a lot of dirt about this guy. I'm hearing what an animal he was. You're not going to have any problem from me. Just keep your mouth shut and don't talk to anybody. And that would be the next guy and the next guy and the next guy. And that went on for days. Like every guy that came in was like, you doing all right? Hang in there. And I had somebody, I dated a girl and her son-in-law was a guard. And he eventually came in. And he said to me, my man, how are you doing? And I'm like, pretty crappy, bro. And he said, you would not believe what's going on in the community. And I said, do people view me as a monster? And he goes, what? He goes, you're kidding me. He goes, Peg was the monster. Everybody wants to know how he was still walking the streets. And he goes, somebody started a Free Clark campaign. And he goes, in 1 week's time, he goes, there's bumper stickers on everybody's vehicle, Free Clark. He goes, hats, shirts, the whole community, like of Stillwater and Newton, like rallied around me and put bumper stickers on. And we had a court hearing, and the prosecutor in court said to the judge, Your Honor, I think it's going to be hard for me to find an impartial jury because on my way to work every day, all I see is Free Clark stickers on every car.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was amazing, man. It was amazing. So, it was my first year in there, Shaun, locked up. I had 30 to life. They charged me with first degree. And it carries. Yeah.
Slow down a bit. How long were you in the unalive cell for?
They kept me in there for 4 weeks. And then because of the surgery, I had a cast on my hand. So they wouldn't let me into general population. So then they put me into an isolation cell for another 3 weeks until they took the cast off. But those unalive cells, they make you want to unalive yourself. It's torture, man. Like you have nothing, the light's on all the time. It's misery, but they had me in the right spot, Shaun, because, I just was like, why should I do life? Like, why? Like,
so after medical, where did they move you to?
So 4 weeks in that, 3 weeks in the isolation cell, and then I'm put on general population.
How did the inmates receive you?
Everybody was cool, man. I had no problems,
How old were you at that point?
I got arrested at 46.
And because a lot of prisoners are survivors too. So were they hip to what your story was?
Since you've been, incarcerated yourself, that people don't let their guard down and share in that environment, something like SA. It's just not done. And yet, myself included and a couple other guys, we would get the newspapers sent in. And I was on the front page. My story was nationwide. It aired in 27 countries around the world. And I was on the front page of the paper every court hearing I had. So guys, everybody knew what I was in there for. And one by one, guys would come up to me. Our jail was filled with like a lot of young addicts. And one by one started come up to me and would be like, hey, you got a second? I'm like, yeah, what's up, man? And same thing happened to me that happened to you as a kid. And that's why I'm here, got addicted. And I was like, wow. I'm like, thanks for sharing with me, And then the next guy came up and the next guy. And I was kept in the county jail for 3.5 years. And over that 3.5 years, it was nonstop guys telling me that. And I was shocked because you don't show weakness like that in that environment. And yet guys responded to me and opened up to me. And that sort of gave me the genesis in my mind. If I could ever get out from under this, 30 to life sentence, that maybe I could help people. And that's what I'm trying to do now, is to help people.
Tell us about your early court appearances.
That first year seemed like I was in court like constantly. Bail hearings, evidence hearings, motion hearings, just constantly in and out of court. I interviewed a bunch of lawyers, and one lawyer's like, I'll get you bailed out of here in 3 days. Like nothing about a defense. Just like, I'll get you bailed out of here in 3 days. This other guy came in, like all gold rings, Rolex on, always like sniffling and touching his nose. And I'm like, oh, I know that sign. What's this guy doing? And he was slick, and he mentioned all these high-profile cases he worked. And I'm thinking in my head, I know those cases. You lost them all. Like, you didn't win any of them, bro. Like, I'm thinking to myself. And he's rattling them off like that's helping him. And I'm like, oh, you're a loser, man. And then I eventually interviewed this guy, Dan Perez. And he came in. And he was very humble, very mild. And he goes, I think you have an excellent defense. I go, I do? He's like, yeah. I go, you don't think my life is over? He goes, no. I'm like, you're hired. Like, that was it, bro. Like, really? You're hired. You're the one. And in our first one-on-one meeting after that, he said to me, he's like, all right, just so I can prepare myself, how much information did you give to the state police? Like, I got to be able to mitigate what you told them. I go, I didn't tell them anything. He's like, really? You didn't say a word? I go, no. And he goes, why? And I go, because they told me not to. He goes, hold on now. Did I hear you right? The state police told you not to tell them anything? And I go, yep. He's like, and he goes, oh, this is going to be a fun case. But it was the truth, man. Howie Ryan, like, don't talk to us. I was like, oh, I won't talk to you, bro. So my lawyer loved that. And, when you're under so much trauma and duress and stress, you got to have a couple moments of where you just laugh, and we both laughed. He's like, oh, this is going to be a blast, So, my first year, Shaun, I didn't have any of my coping mechanisms, sex, gambling, addictions. And so I took it out on commissary food. I was so depressed. I had thoughts of unaliving myself. And over that first year, all I did was sit in my cell and eat junk food and feel sorry for myself. And at one point, I called out to God, who I hadn't had a relationship since age 12. I put up a dividing wall back then. And I called out in my cell because I was so down. I'm like, you either got to help me heal myself or help me unalive myself. And people from all over the country were sending me books. Like almost every cell on our unit had my books. You can only have 6 books at a time in your cell. And I had books everywhere. And I'm like, here, put these in your cell. Here, you put these in your cell. I'll come get them when I'm ready. You can read them, start reading them. And I looked at the books in my cell and I'm like, something told me that day when I called out that I had to start reading. And I picked the littlest book up. I'm like, all right, maybe I can start with that. And it was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's like Prison 101. Like everybody in prison reads Viktor Frankl, it seems like,
Yeah, I love Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, see? But dude, there was a line in there that literally flipped the switch for me. Like, here I am, just down and out. Woe is me, victim, victim, victim. And it said, when you are faced with a situation you cannot change, you are challenged to change yourself. And I'm like, and I read that, and I'm like, I got to read that again. If you are faced with a situation you cannot change, you are challenged to change yourself. And like, my situation could be life in prison. Like, that might not change. So in order to deal with that, I'm going to have to change myself. And changing myself meant working on myself, meant addressing my pain that I never addressed. And that's what I started to do from that point forward. I'm still deeply depressed, but I'm reading now. And I'm still eating my junk food. And at the end of each year you're incarcerated in the county jail, they take you down for a little mini physical. And the nurses weighed me, and I had put on 60 pounds in that year.
Brownies.
Yeah. like honey buns, smart food. Oh my God, we had these potato chips that were so addictive. I can't even. I just went blank on the name. Like, they're the best chip in the world, but I just would get 5 bags, and there's 5 bags of smart food, honey buns, blah, 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 just junk, and just sit there, read my books, and eat garbage, and put on 60 pounds in a year. They brought in a physical therapist. To their credit, the jail brought in a physical therapist and worked with me on my hand on getting movement back. And, I got pretty good movement back in it. And at that end of that year, the guy's like, I can't do anything more for you in here. He goes, that's as good as it's going to get in here. He goes, and you can start using it. You can do push-ups or pull-ups or whatever you want to do. And my lawyer, in one of our meetings after that first year, he came in. You're not seeing each other all the time. And when he came in, he goes, my God, what happened to you? He's like, you're huge. He's like, are you even going to make it to trial? And so between the nurses telling me I put on 60 pounds, between my lawyer wondering if I'm even going to make it to trial, and the physical therapist telling me I can start working out, I'm like, all right, I gotta start doing something. Listen to this though, you'll love this. I had put on so much weight that I had edema, like my legs were like huge, swollen up. And from my open heart surgery, the head nurse there, she thought I might be going into heart failure and that I was retaining fluid because of that. And the last thing they wanted to happen on their watch was something that happened to me. And then, they're like looking at a gazillion-dollar lawsuit if like I go under. So they sent me to a cardiologist to go get my heart checked out. So 2 guards come and get me, shackled up. My legs are shackled. I'm shackled in the front here, like this. And we go walking into the cardiologist's office, and it's filled with old people. And here I come in my orange jumpsuit, one-piece jumpsuit, shackled up, a guard on each arm, and people are like, ah! The guards took me up to the front window, and the nurse like freaked out. She's like, oh, come on, we'll get you into the back room right now. So if you ever want to get right into the doctors, go in an orange jumpsuit, they'll get you right in. And they checked my heart out, and there was nothing wrong with me. It was just that I got huge on honey buns. So, so I started working out, man. And I was so out of shape at that point. I could only do 2 push-ups at a clip. Like 2, I'd have to take a breather. My hand, it's hurting, and do 2, take a breather. I had no muscle, whatever. It's just bloated and fat. And so like I tell people, like, you want to change your life, you just got to take a step in a new direction. You got to do something. I could literally only do 2 push-ups. By the end of my prison stay, I was doing 1,000 push-ups a day. Ooh. Yeah, starting at 2 and getting to 1,000. If I can do it, the next person can do it. But people do think they can only do 2, and they stop because they're ashamed they can only do 2. Well, I can only do 2 also, So I just started working out. I read, I don't know how many books on meditation. I started meditating. Somebody sent me in a yoga book. I started a yoga group on the unit, and we would do yoga on the tier. And there's little spaces where people just congregate, and they would let us do our yoga there. I am feeling the need to feel better about myself by helping others. So there was dudes, incarcerated people, a lot of them don't have education, and they couldn't write letters to the judge, to their lawyers. There was a Spanish guy who was dating an American woman, and he came up to me and asked me to write a love letter for him, asking her to wait for him because he was looking at 10 years. So I wrote a love letter, and he's trying to tell me in, broken English, what to say, and I'm writing it down, and I'm filling in my own, sort of love letter for him. People ask, did it work? And I'm like, he got shipped off to prison. I don't know. I'd like to think it worked and it helped, I had kids in there who were addicted to substances and had robbed their parents, the first ones you go to rob are your family members, and the family members had cut them off. And, I wrote letters, they were trying to get their life straightened out, and they asked me to write letters for them. And so I did stuff like that, and just sharing commissary and giving socks out. And, I was there for years. So I accumulated stuff, when guys would leave, I'd be like, give me your underwear and socks. So, the next guy, I got stuff for him. So they would be like, yeah, fine. And just did stuff like that, man. And I sat for 3 years with that life sentence hanging over my head. And then they finally offered me a plea to second-degree manslaughter. And that carries 5 to 10 here in the States. So I was already 3 years in. My lawyer would have loved to have gone to trial, he says. He thought it would have, he thought jury nullification would have come into play. that there's no way in my rural area they would have got a jury of 12 people to convict me. But you never know. Like, at the end of the day, there was somebody not alive anymore, and you never know how people are going to take that. So it was simply too risky. So I took the plea deal. And when I went to sentencing 6 months later, so now we're at the 3.5-year point, the judge, he was great. And he apologized for having to send me to prison for a single day. And he said, I'm going to give you the minimum, 5 years. And my mother came for a visit early on. This is probably like my 3rd or 4th month. And she stood outside the jail. And her minister from her Episcopal church had been in seeing someone's son. And he came out, he saw her, he gave her a hug, and he grabbed her by the shoulders. And he said, Joan, I want you and your son to start praying on the number 5, as in a 5-year sentence. And she came in and relayed this message to me. And do you ever see the movie Home Alone with Macaulay Culkin? Well, Macaulay Culkin was a little kid, and he goes like this. So she tells me, I just saw my minister, and he wants us to pray on the number 5, as in a 5-year sentence. And I go, oh my God, Mom. I go, a 5 is never going to happen. You got to get more realistic. In my head, I'm thinking like, let's pray for a 20, and my mom's like, Clark, I believe in God and I believe in miracles, and I want you to start believing. And I knew the hell, Shaun, that I was putting her through as a mother. And I'm like, all right, Mom, you got it. I'm going to start praying on the number 5, and I'm going to start believing. And I prayed every day after that on a 5-year sentence. And I meditated on the number 5. And I had a mantra when I would walk on the yard that I would repeat. And I put the 5 into my mantra. And Shaun, lo and behold, 3.5 years later, I get that 5, bro.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was literally amazing.
How did that feel, just walking out of that courtroom then?
My mother was my family was sitting in the front row right behind me. It was a packed courthouse. They filled another courtroom and did a stream into that courtroom. And then the steps outside were filled with people. They wouldn't let any more people in. And he sentenced me to the 5, and I turned over my shoulder and I looked at my mom, and we just smiled, and she just nodded her head. And I know she was saying, see, I told you, and it was amazing, bro. It was amazing. So I still had to go to prison for a year.
Yep.
So off to Northern State Prison in Newark, New Jersey to do a year.
Yep.
And prison compared to jail has its pros and cons. You have more movement in prison. You have more, I guess you could say you have more freedom. Like in the jail, you're escorted everywhere. In prison, if you got to go to another unit or another building, you just walk yourself. You're not escorted anywhere in prison. And there was more options to get involved in programs. Like, my lawyer didn't want me doing AA, let's say, because he's like, you can't go into an AA meeting in jail and talk about your situation. He's like, we've got a criminal case we're dealing with. He goes, you can't do that. And the jail had a therapist, and he's like, you can't tell the therapist anything. Like, if they ask you if you're depressed, say you're depressed, but don't go into your story at all. And the therapist in jail was just there to dole out drugs, like, antidepressants or whatever you needed. So I got to prison, and my very first day there, a therapist came up to my cell and said, "I saw your case on the news, and I just saw your name come across my computer. I can't believe you're here. Will you start therapy with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I had to go to prison to get therapy for the first time in my life. Simply amazing. And I loved this woman, Miss Berger. She was great. And she ran a group therapy class for childhood trauma. I got into that group therapy class, and I'm in there with blood gang members. I'm in there with Latin Kings. I'm in there with Muslims. I'm in there with Christians, black, white. And we're all sharing our horrible childhoods, and we're crying and we're hugging each other. And, that was amazing in itself, Shaun, to be in that environment. You had to take an oath in this group class that nothing would leave the classroom. If it did, you were kicked out immediately. And so we could all talk freely in there and open up. So I got into Bible study class. I did church service. I don't know if you ever did a church service in prison, but man, you want to talk about a lively service? From my stuffy Episcopal church that I grew up in as a child to prison service with guys that have been locked up 23 hours a day for the last 6 days. And now on Sunday, they get a 2.5-hour church service. That place was rocking, man. And they allowed prisoners to play guitars and drums and keyboards. And it was the liveliest service I've ever been at. It was fantastic, man. I love those church services. And my therapist came to me one day and said, "Clark, for the very first time in a New Jersey prison, they're going to offer a meditation class. It's never been offered in a New Jersey prison before." She goes, "I want you to apply. Maybe you'll get a slot." So I applied, Shaun, and I was one of 15 dudes out of a prison of 2,500 to get into that class. And every Friday night for 2.5 hours, we're in a classroom practicing Vipassana meditation, like just quietly doing our breathing for a long time, and then doing a body scan from the top of our head down to our feet. And meanwhile, in the other part of the prison are stabbings and beatings and, just chaos and drug use. And it was great, man. I love that. I love that meditation. It was wonderful, so like I was working on myself, and I was talking for the first time in my life about what I went through. And it wasn't my burden anymore. Like I carried that burden on my shoulders. I guarded my trauma from my childhood like it was a pot of gold. Like, I can't let anybody have this pot of gold. It's all mine. Nobody's going to get it. And that's also how those guys and girls who essay, that's how they have a long run, is secrecy. Like, they scare you, they frighten you, they threaten you, and then you have your shame on top of it. And you just keep a secret. And that's how they have a long run. So you gotta break that secret, and you gotta tell somebody. And now here I am in prison, sharing it with a therapist for the very first time. When I was in the county jail, I told my lawyer and I told our psychologist. We had to do a psych eval on me. And those are the only two people I had told everything to. And then now in prison, I'm telling everything to my therapist in there. And it was great, man. And it just, it was like a release. I could just breathe again. And that's how that's how I finished out my year in there. And then I started also in that year writing my memoir. I wrote my manuscript. I had 3 notebooks of writings, and the guards came in. Somebody dropped a slip on my bunkie. And in the middle of the night, the goon unit came into our cell, stripped us naked, checked us, put us out onto the tier, and tore our cell to shreds. Like real spiteful stuff, like squeezing our ketchup bottle out and dumping our honey out. And they took all my notebooks, all my writings, and threw them in the garbage. And they cuffed my bunkie, took them away, and told me, clean up that mess, Fredericks. Let's go, clean up that cell. And then I had to start from scratch all over again with my writing. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I worked on myself. And I got out of prison at the basically at the start of 2017, December 30th of 2016. And I instantly became an advocate in New Jersey for overturning the statute of limitations law. I wanted to go file a lawsuit against the Boy Scouts, and I saw a lawyer, and he read me the law, and he's like, the way the law reads now, you have no case. And the law read that if you were SA'd at age 18, you had 2 years to file a lawsuit. Who's getting SA'd at 12, 13, or 14 and coming forward at 18 to file a lawsuit? Nobody. It was a dead law. Like, nobody was using it. And I became an advocate. And the lawyer's like, there's people that have been working for 15 years on this new law and haven't gotten anywhere. Maybe your story can push it over the line. And I started meeting with senators in New Jersey, and I met with the other advocates, and we'd go meet senators together. And I got to testify at hearings at the state capitol. And I told all of them I told all the senators in a hearing that they'd have blood on their hands if they didn't adopt a new law, because there would be a lot more Clarks running around. And in a 2-year period, they passed the new law. It went to vote. In 2 years of being an advocate, I was in Trenton at the State House to see the new law voted into action. And it's something a lot of people said would never happen. We went from the worst law in the country to the strongest law, because now the law goes up to age 55. So you have plenty of time to heal before you have to come forward and can hold people in organizations, liable for what they did. Like the Catholic Church, the Boy Scouts, the only thing they understand is money. So like if that's the only thing that'll force them to make change, then go after the money and force them to make change. And that's what we did. And so the new law got passed, and I file a lawsuit against the Boy Scouts, and a short term, like right after I filed, we're talking like a couple months, they declare bankruptcy.
Oh,
yeah, bastards.
Oh.
And like 80,000 people came forward in the Boy Scout lawsuit, and it's still going on. It's been going on for 5 years. With no end in sight, but at least they're being held liable for it. And I also, we have a talk show here in the States called Tamron Hall, and I was on the Tamron Hall talk show. And from being on that talk show, a firm out in LA saw me and got a hold of me and offered me a speaking contract to become a motivational speaker. And I quit my job as an assistant chef at the restaurant I was working at. This is in January of 2020. They had speeches lined up from March to July already for me. And COVID hits. COVID hits, and the brakes got put on everything, and everything got shut down. And I never even, that firm ended up going out of business, declaring bankruptcy and closing up. So in that span of COVID, I wrote 2 book proposals, and the first 2 book proposals went nowhere. And then on the third book proposal, my literary agent started shopping it around, and Simon & Schuster, one of the biggest publishers in the world, made me an offer for my memoir, and I signed a contract 3 years ago. And on July 29th, just a little over a month ago, it came out, and the first print sold out instantly, Shaun. In 3 weeks, the first print sold out. The second print just came out a week ago. And, that's why I have a big UK following. There's a lot of trauma over in the UK, and a lot of people over there follow me. And that's why I had an opportunity to do your show, and I was so excited. This story reaches everybody around the world. And I was just on the other day, it just came out. I think it came out on Thursday or Friday of last week. You guys have a magazine over there, That's Life, and it comes out monthly. And I'm on my article is in this month's That's Life magazine over there. So making a push into the UK to bring awareness to this topic. And usually, three things happen to SA victims: addiction, death, or healing. So I want to take the first two out and try to get people up to the third and heal, man, and talk about it. And that's why I'm appreciative of you to let me on your show to reach more people, man.
Your book's 4.9 stars on Amazon. Within a couple of months, you've got 326 reviews.
Yeah.
And really solid so far. And you're doing great, man. How are you psychologically? You've got your life back on track, but how are you psychologically? How are you staying sane, brother?
I coach people online, and I'm a dude with routines. And my girlfriend said to me one time, why are you so strict with your routines? And I'm like, because you don't want to know the old me, and I don't want to go back to the old me. And routines develop habits, and I have all new healthy habits, and I want to keep them. I don't want to go back to my unhealthy habits of chasing vices and chasing pleasure to heal myself, because it didn't heal myself. It created more problems in my life. So just healthy daily habits and routines, man. That's the path to healing. And
does that include 1,000 push-ups a day?
Yeah, well, those 1,000 push-ups a day and all the burpees I did, I now have torn both shoulders. So I just got stem cell injections in the one shoulder. I got injections in the other shoulder. They haven't worked yet, so I'm going for more shots. So I haven't been able to work out in a while, man. I was trying to be the late 50-year-old version of David Goggins, the Navy SEAL guy who's an animal. And I thought I could be that in my 50s, and I tore both shoulders, man. So my working out has come down.
What about the meditation? My mom does that type of meditation you were doing. How do you pronounce it?
Vipassana.
Vipassana. Yeah, my mom does that. She goes to retreats.
Yeah, body scan. Yeah, I do meditation. I do that dude, Wim Hof. He has the deep breathing exercises. You can go on YouTube and search Wim Hof breathing. So I do Wim Hof breathing, meditation. I'm up early every day, bro, and I go for an early morning walk to energize myself, to start. You got to collect wins early in the day to set the tone for the day. Before all the crap of the day starts creeping in, and the emails and the phone calls and the bad news and the employees you can't stand, and before all that stuff starts happening, you got to get your wins and set a positive tone for your day. And that's what I do every day. And one other thing is, I mentioned to you, back in college, I couldn't be intimate with my girlfriend, and it killed me for us to split and walk away. In my book, Scarred, you'll see that after 30 years of thinking about her, I finally reached out to her. And not knowing if she would respond, and she responded. Responded. I'm making up words here. So she responded, and I responded back. She responded back. And 2 weeks later, we had a cup of coffee and fell right back in love like we were in our 20s. And we've been together.
No way.
Yeah. So in this book, you'll even see how a beautiful love story comes about, man. And having her in my life, it's just made the whole thing come full circle. And I get the girl back at the end of the story, man. It's pretty amazing.
That's so heartwarming. Heartwarming.
I tell people, like, there's seasons to life, Shaun. And you as well as I know this. There's seasons of dark, cold winters where nothing's going right. And you just don't even know how you're going to get through it or if you should get through it. But I'm telling you, those cold, dark winter seasons of life, they're going to go bye-bye. And spring will come again. And you're going to plant seeds for your growth and for your future. And I was asked recently, what season do I think I'm in? And I would say I've been planting seeds for the last decade, and I'm just starting to harvest now. I'm not in a full-blown summer. I'm in that spring-summer mode right now, and things are starting to happen, and I'm reaching more people, and I'm impacting more people, and more people are healing, man. And that's all I'm trying to do. You know, it gives meaning to me to help somebody who's been stuck. You know.
Clark, in conclusion, what do you say to people watching this who are stuck or who have survived childhood trauma?
Your life doesn't have to be forfeited simply because you experience trauma. You know, so many people they get a bad self-worth and they don't think they deserve anything better. And I'm telling you, you do. I want everything life has to offer, and you should too. And because something horrible happened to you, don't let that voice in your head tell you you don't deserve better. I'm here to tell you you do. Get clean and sober, get healthy habits, break your silence and talk about your trauma so you can get past it. And guard the real estate in here. Guard the real estate in your mind. It's the most valuable real estate you'll ever own. And don't focus on your past trauma, because then the monster is still controlling you. Don't sit and let your mind go on spin cycle about the past. It happened. You have to accept it. You can't change it, son. You got to accept it. And let's start working towards where you want to be in the future.
Man, what a story. We've sat here for almost 2 hours just on the edge of our seats. Yeah. You got everybody in the chat right now. They're just giving you love and respect, saying it's one of the most amazing stories they've ever heard. All of Clark's links are in the description box, folks. If you're watching on replay, I urge you to get the book and follow him on his YouTube channel and Instagram. And can't thank you enough, Robert.
One last thing, and this isn't to be a shameless plug, but I cannot believe on Amazon, which your UK followers would have to go to get my book, 6 scam books have popped up. Like, they're just AI generated bot books, and somebody from a foreign country like photocopied or screenshotted a page from my book and said, "Oh, this is a great page," and I'm reading it, and I'm like, that's not my book. So this is the cover you want to look for: a bike on its side in a rural area, a neighborhood rural area. There's 6 other scam books on Amazon. Do not buy them. They're frauds. So that's all I got to say to that.
Yeah, we've got the link, viewers. for Amazon.com in the description box. So I have found, I'm looking at, oh my goodness, I'm on Amazon.co.uk now. And there's loads of different versions. Wow. Hold up your version again, please. So yeah, they've all got photos of you on these versions.
Yeah, they made up like AI generated photos of me.
Oh my God. All right. I think I found yours. It's the hardcover, it's the Audible one, and the Kindle one. And it is the one that's got 100. You got 160 reviews on Amazon UK, and it's 4.9. And this is the legitimate one, and it says the publisher is Atria Books.
Yep, that's the one.
All right, I'm going to put this link also in the description box right now for our UK viewers.
Awesome, bro. Thank you for that.
So you've got a direct link to the legitimate one, because when you search his book on Amazon, you've got like 6 copycats come up before it even lists his.
Yeah, and Amazon won't do anything about it. Like, I have been on the phone with them. My agent's been on the phone with them, the editor, Atria, and they just refuse to take them down.
Isn't that copyright law violation or something?
You would think, man. They're using my title and my name.
No.
Yeah.
You got to have a court case or something and spend money to get them down.
You know how I have to look at it, Shaun? Is I take it as a compliment, because they're not going to make scam books if my book's not selling and amazing. You know, like, it has incredible reviews. It's life-changing, and they're trying to capitalize on it. So,
yeah, they certainly are. Let me just have a look again. This is hilarious. They got these different pictures of people on the covers.
Oh, yeah.
Clark Fredericks, Scarred, Untold Biography by Sherilyn Rhodes.
That's one of them. Yep.
Scarred, the Clark Fredericks story by Gerald Merrill.
That's one.
There's another one. Clark Fredericks' new memoir, Scarred, the true story of trauma, abuse, survival, redemption, and life by Isla Thornton. The next one's by Lawrence Carter. The next one's by Joseph Thiessen and Ben Lindsay. Wow, on and on and on and on it goes. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't realize that was happening.
Yeah, man.
Wow. All right, I'm going to let you go, Clark, and I'm going to close the show. But much love and respect from me. If there's anything we can ever do for you, you just please let us know. So you take care. Cheers, Clark.
Thanks, Shaun. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you too. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Peace, bro. Yep.
What a phenomenal guest, folks. So like I said, get the right book. Links are in the description. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's got his Instagram as well if you want to reach out. I know there's a few unanswered questions, but we have run out of time. I gotta go up and help with baby Siggy. So if you missed last night's stream, we had Kevin A on. Kevin on the Charlie Kirk Unalive Conspiracy. It's got 60K overnight. It's doing really good. Tomorrow at 3 p.m., we've got Kirby Summers coming on. That's 3 p.m. UK time on the 18,000 Epstein emails that have been released. And then Ron's back on the 19th with Phil Chalmers, the serial killer profiler, who's a phenomenal guest we've had on a couple of times. And Lauren is back on Wednesday with her next stream. I know a few people are asking about Wolf on Epstein and Trump. Shane is rescheduling that now. We hope to get him on before the end of the month. We'll try and sort that one out. And we've also got Nathan Reynolds pending as well. See what we can do with him. All right. I'm going to go and spend some time with baby Ziggy, folks. Glad you enjoyed it. Please give it a share. Let's get Clark's story out there.